Good morning. We are going to go through the business research methods chapters. This is going to serve as a read through of my notes. If you need to access them, they are uploaded, and also you have the textbook. So you could use the textbook, read it yourself, or go through this audio visual, okay? Typically, I don't run my classes like this. I very student-centered, very one-on-one coaching, but this is just going to be a run through of the deck. Chapter 1, the research process. And we'll get through as many chapters as possible. Action. All right, happy today, happy every day. So in chapter 1, we're introduced to business research methods in context, the elements of the research process, the messiness of business research. It's not just business research that's messy. Almost all types of research is messy. So just once you accept that, and you know, by messy, it's I've said it in a video before, you're probably going to laugh during the process, also cry if you're human doing the work. If you're not human doing the work, you're probably not going to laugh and cry. But humans writing a dissertation or writing research, yeah, there's some laughing and crying. All right. Reasons for conducting business research. There is a gap in the literature. The literature means the scientific evidence, the body of knowledge. There's a gap, meaning like there's something missing that you can add to, a little bit that you can add to. That's what it means by gap. And by literature means the body of knowledge, the science, the evidence, what we have documented and published so far. There is inconsistency amongst studies. I could mention a few industries, but just because I want to keep this video unbiased, I'm not going to mention. But in business, up to you. Inconsistency among studies. There are unresolved issues. Societal development prompts a research question to understand a topic or phenomenon better. So these are the reasons why we do business research. Influences on business research. Ontology, values, epistemology, practical considerations, theory. Business research in context. The following factors affect the context within which research takes place. Academic theories, because you're going to have a theoretical framework, potentially. Existing knowledge, researchers' assumptions and views regarding the research process. Researchers' assumptions regarding the nature of social phenomenon. So these are your biases that you're bringing in. Quality criteria used to evaluate research, values of research community, political context of research study, training and personal researcher values. One thing that I advocate with my students is if you believe something and you want to study something and you believe that you're going to find this thing, you have this feeling that you're going to research it and this is the outcome. No, sometimes that's not the outcome. And in the process, I want you to look at the opposite. So even if you're thinking you're going to find this answer, look at people talking about the opposite. All right. Which comes first, theory or research? We should examine a problem. I don't like the word should. Excuse me. Do we want to examine a problem and then try to work out how it's caused and how it might be solved? This will be an inductive process. Or do we want to take a generally accepted theory of how things work and find evidence for it in the problem we examine? Deductive reasoning. So these are approaches. Just remember these two ways, because as you're going to decide the topic, then you're going to decide inductive or deductive is how you're going to tackle looking into that topic and adding value and contributing to the body of knowledge, filling the gap. How are you going to fill the gap? Inductive, deductive. Do both. To start, relevance of research to practice. An applied field understanding organizations and solving problems. Has management research lost touch with the concerns of practitioners? Further look at Tranfield and Starkey, and that's cited improperly. That would be an and sign in APA style between here and ampersand, okay? A resource for managers to make informed decisions based on scientific evidence. Can the dynamic of changing nature of organizations challenge generally applicable best practices? And these are good references to also look up yourself and use them in the assignments that I'm asking, that are being asked in the LMS. All right. Because they're there. So if you're like, I can't find peer-reviewed journal articles, or I can't find research, or I can't, yes, you can. This is called, it's secondary sourcing if you source it from my slide. If you source it from my slide into your paper, but if you pull this article, this Tranfield and Starkey, 1998, but like I said, put the ampersand sign if you're gonna use a parenthetical citation in APA. You've pulled it, now it's a primary source for you. And then you could use it in the assignments. Thank you. Okay, can the dynamic and changing nature of organizations challenge generally applicable best practices? Okay, pull it up, 2009 study. Evidence-based management. Evidence-based management is the systematic use of the best available evidence to improve management practice. I have a few of you students right now looking at strategic management. We got to make a study of it. It's got to be narrowed down. Evidence-based management is the systematic use of best available evidence to improve management practice. So again, this the way that this is presented, this needs to be an ampersand sign in here. And you know, this is kind of bothering me, but I'm not going to sit here and edit it because I want to get through the presentation. My assistant is fired for these typos. The concept was developed to reduce variation in clinical practice. So evidence-based management, the concept was developed to reduce variation in clinical practice. Information comes in part from the expertise and judgment of managers working in individual firms. Okay, evidence-based management. So for those doing related management studies, there's a source right there, Ray, Berta, and Cohn, 2009. Something that you can ponder, think of, use. Like I said, there's research. Go into the library, pull it. Some of my students use Google Scholar. Great. Then go into the college university library, pull it. If Google Scholar is not giving you the full article, go to the university library, pull it. Thank you. Have it. Download full PDF. Cite it properly in your reference list and in the body. Moving on. Knowledge is produced in two modes. A lot of us are doing data. So there was once upon a time we got data-driven decision making. Well, you have data, but the data needs to turn to be analyzed. After it's analyzed and looked at over time, it turns into knowledge. After over time, it's knowledge. It's not like data comes to knowledge. Okay, so there's more to it. Model one. So traditional university-based academic audience, pure and applied, built upon existing knowledge, a more linear process, limited emphasis on dissemination. Mode two involves academics, policymakers, and practitioners. It's across many disciplines. It's related to context, therefore not easily replicated, less linear, more emphasis on dissemination and exploitation. So this is cited from Gibbons et al. In 1994. Knowledge is produced in these two modes. You could look up Gibbons, 1994. the title of the journal that this was pulled from is in the references section of our textbook. A lot of, I tell you all that it's like fishing when you're looking for peer review. When you go to the library and you pick a search term, it's like fishing, and the results might bring you something that you could use. Otherwise, you have to pull out another fishing rod, change the search term. But you can also find articles from other references. Moving on. The process of business research. Some come in with some personal experience and they're like, oh, okay, I think that this is what I'm going to study because this is what I've experienced. Well, great, I'm happy. But just because you've experienced it doesn't mean that that's how it is. You need to look at how many others have experienced it, and also how many others who have experienced it put it into scientific studies called the literature review. Literature meaning not what somebody said on the internet or TV, meaning peer-reviewed journal articles, scientific articles, people that have conducted studies that are published. The ones that get published, usually prior to getting published, somebody writes it or a group of people write it, and then the publisher takes it, and then the publisher sends it to others called peers, and they evaluate it, and then they decide, and then it gets published. So that's what we're working with. We're not working with somebody who said something on the internet once or whatever the AI says. Absolutely not. Do not believe what the AI says, because you might not be asking the AI the right way to give you the right answer. So just don't. And if you use an AI to do the literature review, double check it, triple check it, 3 times check it, double check what it has said. Look for the resources yourself in the library. Concepts and theories, research questions, sampling, data collection, data analysis, writing up. Now, because some of my students are in a doctoral of business administration and they're professionals and they're working, they don't have, I mean, this goes for everybody, not just the students who are working professionals. But do you want a dissertation that's going to take 10 years to finish, or 2 to 5 or 1? That all of that has to be kind of thought of. So when you're doing literature review, do it from a perspective of like, what can I do? What can I do? What did they do? But what can I do? What did they do? What can I do? So every piece of thing, whatever you're reading. Then the other thing that you need to do is you got to figure out where you're going to get your data from. So have that in mind as well. If you really love your topic and really love what you're doing, you're talking about it with people throughout your life. You're maybe going to conferences, maybe talking about it at work, maybe talking about it at wherever you go in your life. And as you're talking about it and word gets out, somebody might come and be like, oh, you know what? I have this company and we're looking to research this area. And yes, and then, oh, magically almost you have a study because you have a group or an organization to study or data. Or you can find data, whatever public facing data, whatever's public. You can also be efficient that way by analyzing data that's already public. And the write-up, I don't know, if I was to say which is the most fun to me, I would say the most fun is data collection for me, but analysis is also fun for me, but that's just me. But then I also do like literature review, and I regularly do literature reviews. I don't write dissertations every, I don't publish peer review journal articles like every month, but I do research at least 3 things like a month. And when I tell you, one time I was researching and I forgot to put things in an annotated bibliography, and I totally regretted it because I was like, you know what, I did all this research and then I wanted to go back and reference. And then I was like, you know what, why didn't I just organize it organize it. This is your research project. So from the beginning, if you find articles, make sure you're starting to save it and organize what you're studying. Everything. Something that you don't think you're going to use now, you might use it later. Or it might lead you to another research article. What is already known about the topic? The process of business research. So what's already known? What concepts and theories have been applied to it? So this is so important. This is so important. You don't know what's already known. You maybe know what you know, but You don't know what you don't know. So you need to look it up. You don't know what you don't know. So look it up. What concepts and theories have been applied to it? What research methods have been applied in studying it? This is another thing. It's like almost everybody thinks they're doing something so new. You know what? You need to look up how it's similar to what's been done and make it. If you want to make a brand new study, great, do it. Write up your own methodology, develop your own everything for the sake of this dissertation. If you're gonna use a survey, while you're doing the literature review, look to what other surveys have already been used, surveys, questionnaires, tests. Like if you're gonna ask people tests, so take a survey, take a test, take a questionnaire, look at what ones have already been used, those ones that are already reliable and valid, or if they're not reliable, they already have reliability and validity data, because that's what you would use in this case. With this university here, some universities allow you to make your own survey, some don't. There's reasons. What controversies exist about the topic and about how it is studied? Controversial on topics. Some people want to take certain topics that are quantitative and look at them in a qualitative way, or it's qualitative, look at it in a quantitative way. You'll find that. Just look. What clashes of evidence exist, if any, exist? Sometimes there are. Who are the key contributors to research on the topic? As you're going along, you'll find sometimes you'll see like the similar author names. So get to know who they are. And keep going, keep going, keep going. And if your topic is so new, break it down into the parts and look at the parts and look at the parts. Everybody wants to study AI, not everybody, but almost everybody. And you want to study AI. What about AI? What? How? Drill down specifically. What? Once upon a time, I studied AI 22 years ago, but I looked at language heuristics in AI, and I looked at how well the AI translated messages on message boards, whether it translated them as bullish, bearish, or neutral. And I looked at how well it did that. That's what specific, you need to drill down to specifically, what about AI? What, how far? AI, ooh, big thing. What? Drill it down. And then if it's so new, back it up. What else is going into that study? What else is involved in that? Who? Look at, was it sociology, psychology, statistics? What other theoretical frameworks? You build on it. Okay, moving on. Concepts. Concepts are the way that we make sense of the social world. Concepts are labels that we give to aspects of the social world that seem to have significant common features. Choice between deductive and inductive approaches. I was just very excited about concepts. So do some deductive and inductive. That's what I was saying with drilling down. Exciting times, the research questions. Types of research question. Predicting an outcome. Does Y happen under circumstances A and B? So are you thinking like, does Y happen under circumstances A and B? And it could be, so think of your topic and what variables can be Y and what circumstances can be A and B. This is going to help with research questions. Explaining causes and consequences of a phenomenon. Is Y affected by X, or is Y a consequence of X? So start thinking, start thinking. Describing a phenomenon. What is Y like, or what forms does Y assume? Developing good practice. How can we improve Y? How can we improve Y? And empowerment. How can we enhance the lives of those we research? Good times writing research questions. Practice. Just practice writing a few about your topic. and you're going to rewrite them numerous times. Don't worry. That's why we said it's messy. Just keep at it. The process of business research. Sampling. So we can use a survey, case study research. What did I say about surveys? Surveys, questionnaires, tests. You can go ahead and make up your own, but if you are going to make up your own survey research questionnaire, you're going to have to pilot on a group that you're not going to use later for your study that will test the reliability and validity of the tool, test, questionnaire. Got it? That means extra step. You can do it if you're approved to do so. But I think that's a whole study within itself. Reliability and validity data for a test, instrument, questionnaire, survey. Data collection, structured interview or participant observation. I like observation and looking and documenting what I just saw. I give a great example in class about the difference between asking somebody to answer to you why they, let's say, quit playing a video game versus observing how their gameplay was in the video game and then seeing why they really quit playing the video game. So once upon a time when I researched that, I found that what people said, the reason why they quit playing a video game did not match what I have observed why they stopped playing the video game. I watched their gameplay. All right, so that's why sometimes I like observation better, because people are gonna tell you what they think to tell you, but what really happened, you can interpret it by observing better. Not calling people liars, it's just like we don't know. Like sometimes we just give the reason that we think is the reason. But as observed in another way, we could see that there was something else going on in the gameplay that was causing people to drop off. Data analysis, transcriptions, coding, thematic analysis, secondary analysis. Writing up, generally to include the literature review, research methods, results, discussions, and conclusions. So the literature review is part of the write-up, but you need to do that first at the beginning to know what you're going to do later and where you're going to fill the gap. So discussions and conclusion. The messiness of business research. The process of business research is not always so linear in reality. It can be much messier. Linear means I'm going to go from here to here, like, oh, I'm going to conduct the study and this is how it's. No, it's going to probably go like this. Like, oh, sometimes it goes like the other way, backwards. So flexibility is important as you navigate the research process. Flexibility in your thinking, flexibility in, don't be so rigid, especially in where you come to me at the beginning and you're like, I'm studying this because I have such a feeling that this is what I'm going to study and this is what I'm going to find. Yeah, I got news for you. Be flexible. That's it. Be flexible. Just be flexible. Meaning like, don't think so much that this is the right way or this is what you're going to find, because there might be people who have already found something different. I want you to look that up too. And then also, if there's already 500 studies that found what you want to study, then you need to study something different. Okay, or something, make it to the next level. Be flexible. Like, you're stretching this far, but it's already enough people have stretched this far, this arm's length. So you need to take it like a little bit further. Okay. Flexibility is important as you navigate the research process, the whole process. Your own research community, classmates, supervisors, it's important to support you through the process, but also people you interact with, professionals, go to conferences, people around you, you're really excited about something, you're going to talk about it everywhere, okay? And that's how you're going to attract potentially the parts of pieces that you need. Key points from this chapter Business research and business research methods are embedded in wider contextual factors, and these include ethical and practical considerations. We didn't go into ethics that deeply in this chapter, but we're going to in the future. Business research practice comprises elements that are common to all, or at least most forms of business research. So look at the way business research is, and use our book as a reference for how to structure your business research. Because there's, in addition to using the book as an actual reference, the book has more references in there that you can pull from. Like I said, grab them, look them up yourself in the library. Attention to these steps is what distinguishes academic business research from other kinds of business research, such as market research conducted by private companies. Although we can attempt to formulate general principles for conducting business research, we have to recognize that things do not always go entirely to plan. All right, chapter 2, business research strategies. And we are doing great. We can probably get through a few chapters if I take this pace and don't go off too much. So in chapter 2, the chapter explores the nature of the relationship between theory and research, epistemological issues, ontological issues, how these issues relate to the widely used types of research strategy, quantitative, qualitative, the ways in which values and practical issues are also central to business research. Research strategy refers to the overall approach taken in your research project. You, at the beginning, you have a strategy. I'll be honest with you, it's probably going to change. So have it though, and then be flexible. Theory is the most common meaning as a way of explaining observed patterns of association between phenomena. So sometimes there are some theories, and you need to use whatever theories you're using in your dissertation. You're going to pull and say, well, we're basing off of this theory. Business research does not exist in isolation. There's a link between social reality and research. Link between business research methods and practice connect with a wider social relations. Understanding the link between theory and research. There are two key issues here. What form of theory is being referred to? What form of the theory? Is the data collected to test theories or build them? So there might be something new. Your numbers might, you'll collect data. You could add to the body of knowledge in that sense that there's this theory and it hasn't been looked at in this industry, and then you're applying what was done in business research in one industry to another, and you're still adding, there's still a gap because you're adding to the body of knowledge in another industry. Hope that makes sense. Don't like the word hope either. But moving on. Theories come at two levels: grand theories, middle range theories. So you could look up Merton 1967, pull it from the library, have it, reference it as we're going along, especially you could use it in your assignments. And then structural functionalism, symbolic interactionism, critical theory, post-structuralism, structuration theory. You got to look what is related to your topic of interest. Because as you're looking at peer-reviewed journal articles, you'll find these. Deductivism, inductivism. We talked about inductive and deductive. So explicit hypothesis to be confirmed or rejected is quantitative research. Well, for deductivism, this is where we have a hypothesis, a null hypothesis. We fail to reject the null hypothesis, quantitative research. Inductivism You can make some generalizations from observations. It's qualitative research, a grounded theory. I'm a fan of quantitative, that's me. Have I conducted qualitative research? Yes, I have. Okay, I like both. I like quantitative better. That's just me. The process of deduction. Look at this. If you're visually impaired, it says it's boxes that say that it's a rectangle that says theory, and then an arrow with a drop down that says hypothesis, and then an arrow with, these are a bunch of, it's just a stack of rectangles and with arrows in between them. Starting at the top, it's theory, hypothesis, data collection, findings, hypothesis confirmed or rejected, revision of theory. Types of reasoning. There are 3 types of reasoning in organizational research. Theory testing research, inductive case research, interpretive research. So go ahead and you can further look up Mantier and Kivi, 2013. It looks like this, it's quoted from page 75 of that study about interpretive research and inductive case research and theory testing research. Looking at all these, you can further look at them while thinking of your topic, but then sometimes looking at them, you can think of your topic in a different way. So it's important to just do the work. And even though you think that you're going to study something this way, look at the other ways that you could study it, because it's called reasoning, and then that's also called critical thinking. An increasing popular approach, neither inductive or deductive, abductive as a third way, based on pragmatist approach, starts with a puzzle or surprise and then seeks to explain it. Involves the researcher selecting the best explanation from competing explanations or interpretations of the data. Look up Mantier and Kivi 2013 to further evaluate whether you want to use abduction or not. Thinking about this now, it's starts with a puzzle or surprise. I don't know if there's any current puzzles or surprises off the top of my head that I can, but if you have one in your company or in your industry, go for it. Philosophical assumptions in business research. Despite sometimes being an applied subject solving practical problems in organizations, a basic understanding of philosophy remains essential, important for generating valuable knowledge about reality. So yeah, you can probably drill it down to something philosophical, potentially. Important for generating valuable knowledge about reality. That's what philosophy. I was watching a biographical comedy, and there was discussion in a black and white video of communications. And the prediction was that it would take people away from cities. Here we go. I have to stay on time, on target. But the fact that if I'm an executive and I could run my company from anywhere, and that empowerment can be put in everybody's hands, device, right? Like I could do almost anything from that little thing. That, and this is a black and white video, so it's probably from a while ago, and it was included in this biography, and it said that because that, we're not going to be people who are going to flock to cities. But there's predictions that cities are growing and cities are still a thing that's happening. So why are we as people still, now that we can communicate and work, why are we still flocking to cities? Don't know. Just wanted to share that. But philosophically, like, you'd think that if you're able to communicate, obviously there's other reasons and there's more appeal to cities, right? We're social beings and I can go on and on, but for the sake of this, let's just keep moving. What is considered acceptable knowledge? Can the social world be studied scientifically? Yes. Is it appropriate to apply the methods of the natural sciences to social science research? Positivism and interpretivism are contrasting approaches. So positivism, knowledge is arrived at by gathering facts that provide the basis for laws. Science must and can be conducted in a way that is value-free, so objective. There is a clear distinction between scientific statements and normative statements, and the former are the true domain of the scientist. Scientific statements. Only phenomenon and hence knowledge confirmed by the senses can genuinely be warranted as knowledge. The purpose of theory is to generate hypotheses that can be tested and that will allow explanations of laws to be assessed. I like it. Interpretivism, taken to denote an alternative to positivism, is predicted upon the view that a strategy is required that respects the differences between people and the objects of the natural sciences, and therefore requires a social scientist to grasp the subjective meaning of social action. Weber's notion of symbolic interactionism, you could look further. Even as a social scientist myself and industrial organizational psychology practitioner, I still am in favor of quantitative, very objective research. That's just me. You do you. Realism. Realism shares two features with positivism: empirical realism, critical realism. You have my deck. I'm not going to read through. I'm going to try to get through the chapter faster. Ontological considerations. Do social entities exist independently of our perceptions of them? Is social reality external to social actors or constructed by them? Stuff to think about. What kind of objects exist in the social world? The nature of social entities. What is objectivism? It's a position that asserts that social phenomena and their meanings have an existence that is independent of social actors. It implies that social phenomena and the categories that we use in everyday discourse have an existence that is independent or separate from actors. Constructivism. Position that asserts that social phenomenon and their meanings are continually being accomplished by social actors. Researchers' own accounts of the social world are constructions. Knowledge is indeterminate. Social phenomenon and categories are in a constant state of revision. Social phenomena and categories are produced through social interaction. One of my favorite research topics, social interaction. What is the role of a paradigm? A paradigm is a cluster of beliefs that influences what we're going to study, because we have a paradigm or a story in our head or an example, how research is going to be conducted, how results are going to be interpreted. Social sciences consist of competing paradigms. So these are competing ideas, competing stories or examples. So there's, on one side, there's people who are more subjective. On the other side, people, well, if you're using the word ist, or it could be a perspective or a person that's behaving in this way, right? So they could be, the person can be subjective, objective. The research can be subjective or objective. And there's radical and regulatory. So problem solving orientation leading to rational explanations. Functionalist, that's on the bottom right of our quadrants here. Radical structuralist, structural power relationships results in conflict. Radical humanist, individuals need emancipation from the social arrangement of organizations. Interpretive, organizations do not exist apart from the perceptions of people working in them. Study their experiences. Quantitative research is a research strategy. It emphasizes measuring, quantification in the collection and analysis of data, entails a deductive approach to the relationship between theory and research, in which the emphasis is on the testing of theories. It has incorporated the practices and norms of the natural scientific model and of positivism in particular. It takes a view of social reality as an external, objective reality. Features of quantitative research: measurement of social variables, common research designs or surveys, experiments, numerical and statistical data is used, deductive theory testing, positivist, objectivist view of reality as external to social actors. Qualitative research emphasizes, it's a research strategy, emphasizes words, it emphasizes words rather than numbers or quantification. So emphasizes on language, somebody saying something about something and you're interpreting the words. In the collection and analysis of data. And that predominantly emphasizes an inductive approach, the relationship between theory and research, in which emphasis is placed on the generation of theories. Because sometimes you want to build that quantitative measure, that quantitative survey or test, right? And in order to make that test that can be quantitative, you need to collect a bunch of qualitative data, a bunch of what are people saying about this subject? And then out of all the things that people said in open-ended questions, you can take those and turn them into close-ended questions in a different measure, right? So it's a matter of, both are important, okay? So in qualitative, has rejected the practices and norms of the natural scientific model and of positivism, in particular, the preference for emphasis on ways in which individuals interpret their social world. So it takes a view of social reality as a consistently shifting emergent property of individuals' creation. So features of qualitative research: understanding the subjective meanings held by actors. Common methods are interviews, ethnography. Data are words, texts, and stories. Inductive approach: theory emerges from data. Social constructionist. Mixed methods: is it possible to combine quantitative and qualitative strategies within a research project? Yes. Kind of just mentioned it like just before. So if the study is, you're getting a bunch of people to answer open-ended questions that you could then find the commonalities and create a questionnaire with close-ended questions, and then use that on a greater scale. There's so many ways to do it. So Holmberg, 2008, study of leadership shows how combining quantitative and qualitative research provided a more rounded and complete picture. And I've seen when students are writing about mixed methods in a class and in their writing assignments, I've seen more, this was from 2008, but I've seen a good job on providing like newer studies that talk about mixed methods as examples in your work. So, but you can still look up this 2008 one, but it's a good job because I have seen newer ones. And if you are submitting references to me, I am checking them. I am copying, I'm looking up from the DOI, and if there's no DOI, I'm actually looking them up. Factors influence researchers' choice of methods. Organizational, historical, political, ethical, evidential, personal. These are factors. Practical considerations. This may influence or determine choices on your, I'm big on practicality. So research strategy, design, method, resources, and costs. So maybe influence are determined by nature of the topic, people being investigated, political acceptability. So all these things, even if you didn't think they're going on in your head, or if they're not, make them. And if you think they weren't, they probably are. So key points: relevance to practitioners and the fundamental purpose of business research. Quantitative and qualitative research constitute different approaches to social investigation. Theory can be depicted as something that precedes research or as something that emerges out of it. And epistemological considerations of influence research strategy. Okay, so research designs. How are you going to design research? I don't know. You got to think of a few designs, because sometimes you're thinking one way and then practicality comes in and then you have to go another way. So be flexible. Moving on. Chapter objectives. Reliability, replication, and validity are presented as criteria for assessing the quality of business research. And that is why you can't just make up your own questionnaire, or just make up your own survey, or just make up your own test on emotional intelligence and think that you can measure emotional intelligence because you just made this test up. You can't, because you need to reliability and validity test it, right? It's got to be replicated to show that it is testing what it really tests. It's valid, and that it does it over time reliably, consistently. 5 prominent research designs are then outlined. So here in chapter 3, we're going to talk about, I don't see the meta-analysis here, but there's more. You can look up more as well. So these are the prominent research designs, and you are welcome to find other ones. Experimental and related designs: quasi-experiment, cross-sectional, most common form of which is social survey research, longitudinal study and its various forms. Not sure how much time we have to do a longitudinal study when it comes, if you want to do it in your career after your dissertation, go for it. If you want to do it as your dissertation, you can do it too, but think about it. Longitudinal design, various forms in such a panel study and a cohort study. You could do a cohort study as long as it's within like a shorter period of time. Case study design, comparative design. Each research design is considered in terms of the criteria for evaluating research findings. Research designs and methods. A research design provides a framework for the collection and analysis of data. Choice of research design reflects decisions about priorities given to the dimensions of the research process. So, are you going to conduct an experiment, experimental, a cross-sectional, longitudinal, a case study, or comparative? A research method is simply a technique for collecting data. Choice of research method reflects decisions about the type of instruments or techniques to be used. Assessment criteria: is it reliable? Is it valid? Can you replicate it? Types of validity. Construct validity. Do measures reflect concepts? Internal validity. Are causal relationships between variables real? External validity. Can results be generalized beyond the research setting? Ecological. Are findings applicable to everyday life? Alternative criteria and qualitative research. Trustworthiness. And there's a reference of Lincoln and Guba, 1985. Credibility, transferability, dependability, confirmability, relevance. Importance of a topic, contribution to the literature in that field. So relevance, trustworthiness. And relevance is cited from Hammersley, 1992. Experimental design elements. Random assignments of subjects to experimental and control groups. Pre-testing of both groups. Independent variable manipulated. Are all other variables held constant? Post-testing of both groups. Computation and analysis of groups. Manipulation. In order to conduct a true experiment, it is necessary to manipulate the independent variable in order to determine whether it does in fact have an influence on the dependent variable. Threats to internal validity. Events may have caused the changes observed. history. Subjects may become sensitized to testing. People change over time in any event. Maturation, non-random selection could explain differences. Ambiguity about the direction of causal influence, because sometimes the temporal sequence is unclear. And there's 1957 and research from 1979 that talk about, now, if you're not like making your own questionnaire, and if you don't need to like make your own test or survey, test it for reliability and validity, we're not going to go so deep into these. If you're using one that's already reliable and valid, you say you're going to use this reliable and valid test to test, let's say, the humor styles questionnaire. There is a such thing, humor styles questionnaire, that tests what kind of humor style you have, and it's been around for a long time and it's reliable and valid. So say you're going to use that to test how funny people are at your work, how humorous they are, or what kind of humor style they have in your organization, in your office, and interdepartmentally even, right? And then that can be used, and then you pull that in. It's been around for a long time. That humor styles questionnaire has been around for a long time. You use that, and you write up that you're using it and that you got permission to use it, and then you use it, and then you analyze what are the humor styles in your organization. And you can make predictions too, based on theories, based on what's out there, and about, I'm going off too far, but that's just an example why you would not so much worry about this, because if you're using one that's already been reliable and validated, you just put that in, plug it in. But if you're creating it yourself, you're going to have to go through all this. Internal validity, external validity. So interaction of selection and treatment, interaction of setting and treatment, interaction of history and treatment, interaction effects of pre-testing, reactive effects of experimental arrangements. Again, 1957, 1979, these are cited. Cross-sectional design. So a cross-sectional design is the collection of data on more than one case, usually quite a lot more than one, and at a single point in time, in order to collect a body of quantitative or quantifiable data in connection with two or more variables, usually many more than two, which are then examined to detect patterns of association. Cross-sectional design is mostly associated with survey method, but can be used with other methods. Structured observation, some students are doing this, where they're using financial data, key content analysis, official statistics, and diaries. Key principles: more than just one case at a single point in time, quantitative or quantifiable data, and there's patterns of association. And survey research. Survey research comprises a cross-sectional design in relation to which data are collected predominantly by questionnaire or by structured interview on more than one case, usually quite a lot more than one case, and at a single point in time, in order to collect a body of quantitative or quantifiable data in connection with two or more variables, usually many more than two, which are then examined to detect patterns of association. Evaluating cross-sectional research. We're going to evaluate it reliability and measurement validity. They're not connected to the design, whether you can replicate it. The researcher specifies all the procedures. So this is important. It's like you're making a recipe. It's like the way that you're describing what you're going to do in your research is like you're writing a recipe, but for, like, let's say, an alien. You have to explain everything as simple as possible, as clear as possible, as, okay, well, let me not say alien, but like someone who knows absolutely nothing about, you have to explain it step by step so it can measure like everything. Internal validity, external validity, ecological validity. So doesn't matter what type of research you're doing, you still have to explain step by step, as simple as possible, what you're doing. Longitudinal design, survey of the same sample on more than one occasion. Typical used to map change in business and management research. I do like this. In a panel study, and there's a fairly recent article from 2017, wages and earnings of older workers in Britain, a cohort study. A cohort is a group, all graduates from a business studies course in the same year. So a cohort can also be if you see students, if there's these groups of students and they're in your class, this class, and then they're in your same class, and they're in your next other class, you're a cohort. Like you could be the cohort of just you in this one class, but you can also be in a greater cohort of ones that are on this path, and you're taking, you'll see some similar students and some of the same students in classes you're taking. And so you can study cohorts, you can study groups, panel. Overall, so then evaluating longitudinal research, overall the characteristics are very similar to cross-sectional research designs. Some things to think about that could be problematic is people leaving, because managers leave the study or companies merge or go out of business. So that can happen if you're studying people in an office and or a building or organization or students. It happens everywhere. When knowing when is the right time for the next wave of data collection, the first round may have been badly thought out, which leaves the later rounds a bit messy. And then this is a panel conditioning effect may creep into the research. Case study design, detailed and intensive analysis of one case. A specific person, an event, organization, or community often involves qualitative research. Case is the focus of interest in its own right. Location setting just provides a background. Types of case: critical, unique, extreme, revelatory, exemplifying. Evaluating case study research. The biggest issue concerns external validity because it is impossible to generalize these findings. I don't like the word impossible. To me, impossible is I'm possible. But moving on. The point of the research is to examine particulars rather than attempt to generalize. Cases may be extended longitudinally or through a comparative design. So types of case: a critical case, a unique case. I've already said these before: single versus multiple, longitudinal, representative, revelatory. Comparative design, using the same methods to compare two or more meaningful contrasting cases. Can be qualitative or quantitative, often cross-cultural comparisons. There's a study from IBM. Hofstede studied IBM in 1984. And if you're watching this and you're one of my students who wants to do the strategic management topic, go ahead and pull Hofstede's 1984 study of IBM managers in different countries. That's going to potentially help enlighten you because even though it was done in 1984, it can still help bring ideas to the forefront of your, is this the prefrontal cortex? I don't know, whichever part of the brain, and I've studied some neuropsychology, but whatever part, just go ahead and look up Hofstede's 1984 study. If you have, well, you need to have the book, but the Hofstede's 1984 will be in the reference section so that you can pull the right title, okay? Or if you look up Hofstede and IBM, you might come up with it in 1984, but if there's multiple ones in 1984, then you need to look up the title in the references section of our book, of our textbook. Problem of translating research instruments and finding comparable samples. Evaluating comparative design. The characteristics are identical to those of cross-sectional design because the comparative design is essentially two or more cross-sectional studies carried out at the same point in time. Comparing two or more cases can show circumstances in which a particular theory will or will not hold. Level of analysis: more than just one case at a single point in time, quantitative or quantifiable data, patterns of association. Bringing research strategy and research design together. Both quantitative and qualitative strategies can be executed through any of the research designs covered in this chapter, although experimentation is rarely used in qualitative research. Use of comparative design, for example, quantitative, and we can pull up Bregman et al.'s 2005 study of internet shoppers in the United States and Belgium. Qualitative, Hyde et al.'s 2006 evaluation study of a role design in the NHS. So you can pull these and look further and be further enlightened or aware of quantitative and qualitative. Look these up in the library. It's good practice. It's good practice. Key points from this chapter: the distinction between research method and research design. There are 3 key technical terms for evaluating research: reliability, validity, replicability. There are 5 key research designs: experimental, cross-sectional, longitudinal, case study, and comparative. There are various potential threats to validity in non-experimental research. Although the case study is often thought to be a single type of research design, it has several forms. Key issues concerns with the nature of a case study, evidence in relation to issues such as external validity. So we jump to chapter 7 because this is for, we're going to jump to chapter 7 and we're going to go back to chapter 4 in the next business research methods course. We've broken this up this way. So let's just rock and roll with this. Writing up business research. You'll see it too, because if you're in business research methods, this 100 level, and then you go to this next 100 level and this next 100 level, that's why they're they're different. So why writing, and especially good writing, is important to business research? How to write up your research for a dissertation project, how quantitative and qualitative research are composed, how they differ, and using examples. So issues in writing up business research. Do quantitative and qualitative research reveal divergent approaches? Similarities are more apparent than the differences. Most people find writing up research more difficult than carrying it out. Convince your readers about the credibility of the knowledge claims made. Good writing needs to be persuasive and convincing, and it has to be persuasive from the beginning. You have to persuade me why your topic, and persuade me why your topic is worth studying. Persuade me, not just me, but it's not just me that you're persuading. You also have your chair, your committee, and you have your defense. So I'm just the first, one of the first people at the beginning that is going to help you become persuasive. And how are you going to become persuasive? Is because you're going to really know your stuff. You're going to be persuasive because you're going to really know your stuff. And because you really know your stuff and you looked at the literature, you're going to sell it to me that this is what needs to be studied next by you. What is rhetoric? It's concerned with the attempts to convince or persuade the audience, credibility of knowledge claims. Like I said, you're going to look at research that supports what you're saying. So as you're finding articles and you find a piece that supports so say somebody wrote a research study and it has a bunch of stuff, don't summarize the study. Just take the part of the study that supports what you were trying to say and pull that reference and cite. But that makes it easier to paraphrase because you're not summarizing what somebody else wrote. You're just taking what they did find and support, citing them for finding it, and then putting it in your study to be persuasive. Rhetoric is an essential ingredient of writing, convincing of credibility of knowledge claims. Examination of rhetorical strategies is concerned with the identification of the techniques in those texts that are designed to convince and persuade. Moving on. So there's problems. Important to write in a way that follows conventions of logic, argumentation, and style. So it's important to write in a way that follows conventions of logic, argumentation, and style. And I teach many times international students. So we're people from all over the world, right? We're people from all over the world. We speak different languages. Okay, that's great. That's fine. I don't so much mind when I read things and there's like a language issue. However, we're all going to still follow logic, argumentation, and style. And yes, there are different styles across cultures. I'm okay with that, but logic and argumentation. Makes little distinction between papers based on quantitative and qualitative methods. So these are problems from this research drafts in 1995. So common problems in papers These are common problems. So make some. In 1995, these are the common problems that are found in papers. There's no theory. And we, from the beginning here, because I cover this in numerous business research methods level classes, you're not going to get past me without a theory. But if you do, and you get to the next level, your chair is going to, hopefully your chairs or your chair and your committee are going to make sure that you have a theory. Concepts and operationalization, not in alignment. So we have operational definitions, the terms, like the words. Some of you come at me with these words. I don't know what these words are because you're in different industries, but you're going to operationalization. They're not in alignment. The concepts and the operationalization are not in alignment. We do need to break down in operationalization. You're going to need to break down like all the operations, and you're going to define the different terms in there. So insufficient definition. So from number one, we went from no theory to insufficient theory, and then insufficient rationale, which is design. Macro structure, organization and flow, amateur style and tone, inadequate research design, over-engineering, conclusions not in alignment. Fortunately, my graduate students, I've only seen amateur style and tone in undergrad so far in my career, but early undergrad. I'm glad it's getting better as we move to graduate school. Over-engineering, conclusions not in alignment. Okay, so there's a checklist that we work off of at school. And when we check these boxes and we're checking them that we did it, make sure you write your notes as to how you did it in your paper, okay? Tips for writing up your research. Start early, be persuasive, get feedback, avoid discriminatory language. Structure your writing as follows, and use the APA style. APA, I provide templates. The Writing Center has templates. On the Writing Center section, I take the links, I link you to those templates, or I download the templates, upload them in the LMS. You have templates. You'll have the template for the whole dissertation, the prospectus, the proposal. Structure your writing as follows. Just for this part, use the templates, might as well. Start early, be persuasive. How can you be persuasive? Just know your stuff. By stuff, I mean your topic. By your topic, I mean not just what you think about your topic, but what others have said about your topic that's opposite to what you think. Typical ways of constructing an argument. So this is it's a square, and it has the dissertation chapter from chapter 1, introduction, chapter 2, literature review, 3, research methods, 4, results, findings, cases, discussion, analysis, and then conclusion. Commonly used phrases to make an argument. So I don't want you to use Grammarly. I don't want you to use AI. Really, I just want you to use your brain, okay? Yeah, I'm definitely somebody who tried Grammarly, but it makes my writing too wordy. I can't stand it. I cannot stand it. I cannot stand it. I cannot stand it. I write in a direct, concise way, and this is how I write, and that's that. And maybe it's useful for people who speak another language to use Grammarly to help with their academic writing. I cannot stand it. I do not like it. I think Microsoft Word is enough. In my opinion, as of 2023, Microsoft Word is enough, because what does Microsoft Word then later do is it helps you think of things yourself and how to write. And it catches like maybe a sentence that's a run-on, and it makes you think of how to make it not a run-on, instead of like Grammarly, like fixing it for you, because then you're using your brain better, okay? So commonly used phrases to make an argument. Please, in this dissertation, I will argue that. Honestly, I think we're at the point where I'm even having my students in the prospectus and in the proposals write that in this dissertation, the researcher will. So in this dissertation, the researcher will argue. In this dissertation, the author will argue. In this dissertation, it will be argued. It will argue, sorry. This dissertation will argue. I'm just thinking of ways to say it without using I. But at the beginning, as we're in these beginning courses, I'm accepting it, but I'm just also, because by the time you get to later, you're gonna write it in APA style and you're not gonna use I, no I. You're gonna say this researcher, author. This dissertation argues that. It is often argued that. It is argued here that. It could be argued that. And this is where maybe take all these and as a fun activity, just go ahead and find what it argues, but then how it's supported, your references. Who supports that argument? Who? Find 5 to 10 research studies. So in the literature review, here's some more tips on how, some wording that you can use in your literature review section. In the introduction, the researcher argued, and then what did you argue as a researcher? And then keep going. This argument is illustrated by exploring the concept of, here we go. Now we are drilling into the literature review and like pulling more of our supportive, going into more depth from the introduction and the articles we cited in the introduction. We're going into more depth with the support peer review with more, okay? This is the money, people, right here. This is the money, please, students. I so much prefer you follow learning from this than AI writing for you and Grammarly. Write it yourself in Microsoft Word. I think Google Docs, not sure if Google Docs gives you like the little red underline if you have a typo. I think it does. So I think Google Docs, it's a matter of your brain doing the critical thinking and not some other tool that kind of, trying to use the right, the kind of doesn't let your brain do the critical thinking. You need to do it. You need to critically think. So right now in class, we are about up to, we're at the first 3. This business research methods class, we're at the prospectus and the proposal writing part. So later, so a lot of times also this part that you're studying is a lot of will, like you're going to do it in the future. And then what you do later after it's done, you change it all around to it has been done, right? So this dissertation argued, that's when you would change the introduction to, for the case of literature review, some ways to write it, right? Let me continue. The argument in this dissertation draws on instead of saying you can say the researchers' arguments build on the work of so-and-so. The researchers build on the work of so-and-so. Some would argue that and write that. Others have argued this. These are fantastic. And then there's other words and other ways to word it, right? As Bryman argued, Bell 1999 argues that blank. In this chapter, the author will situate the argument in the literature on, and then you could talk about your theory or your concepts, your theories. For the sake of just going on, even though in this particular, following the arguments put forward by so-and-so, so in your research methods, you'll find other researchers who studied the way that you want to study, so you have to put that in there, all right? And then the results, findings, cases. This shows, this demonstrates, this implies, from this, the author suggests. What is not in there, people? What is not in there? What is not in there? This proves. You're not ever gonna write this proves, ever, 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 ever. You're just gonna write this supports something, okay? So words like proves, don't put them in there. Okay. Discussion analysis. You want to use words like demonstrate, shows, supports, demonstrate, shows, supports. Then the limitations. Also, you're going to put your limitations. Because even if you think you just proved something, there's probably limitations. So you really didn't prove anything, but you're going to say that whatever you did supports this argument, okay? Whatever argument you were making from the beginning. So based on these findings, I would argue that. And then this is part of your discussion. And you can get into a little practice. You know, it might be good practice for us to also think it through this far. And then in an earlier chapter, in an earlier chapter, the author argued. In an earlier chapter, the researcher argued. Again, we're doing APA 7. We're not going to use I. In this dissertation, the researcher argued for. So your conclusion is like, in this dissertation, the researcher argued for whatever you said in your introduction, basically. And then the researcher concluded that. The researcher concluded that in this dissertation, the researcher argued for a more blah, 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 whatever you argued more of. And then it found, and then you can put in to conclude, we found this shows that, this demonstrates that. Here's my conclusion, suggestion for further research. Okay, we are almost at time. I'm gonna see what comes next. Want to end on this. I want to end on this. We've had about 90, we're almost at 90 minutes. This is about the time of my hot yoga class where we do 26 and 2 postures in 90 minutes. This was a good activity for me to actually sit here and go through the deck and go through the book, because like during class, I don't sit there and do this in class because I give students one-on-one attention, and we do group talk and we do group work and we work together and we do a lot more talking instead of me talking. And now I got a chance to talk, and the talking that I did is recorded. So you can go ahead and stop me, pause me, fast forward me, don't watch me at all, don't care. You do you, but you have audio and visual of my notes. You have the book, you have a copy of my deck. Happy today, happy every day.